This is Chuck Cecil continuing a 12-hour remembrance of Glenn Miller. This is the 9th hour of our story, a story told by records and by the men and women who singing, playing, and arranging helped Glenn Miller make music and memories.
Glenn was, I think that he's unfairly compared to Dorsey. I think he played his trombone very well for what he did.
He wouldn't tolerate sloppy playing or people that looked that way either.
It's hard for me to remember specific sessions. We did so many. We were doing them like every couple of weeks we'd have a session.
Glenn Miller recording session number 55. Billy May trumpet, Tex Beneke tenor, and clarinetist Willie Schwartz remembering Billy May had made the arrangement for that recording of Take the A Train.
Well, one of the bigger steps in the band was when Billy May joined the band. He had been with Charlie Barnett, and Glenn allowed him to write some arrangements, and he brought in a whole new concept of playing, because we were just slogging along playing the ballads and trying to play swing music, and weren't quite making it. And Billy was like a fresh young arranger then, and he inspired the band.
There'll be no friends waiting to throw shoes and rise. Those heavenly moments will never never come twice. I'm thankful for the hours you blessed. I guess I'll have to dream the to dream the rest. There'll be no friends waiting to throw shoes and rice. Those heavenly moments will never come twice. I'm thankful for the hours you blessed. I guess I'll have to dream the rest. Guess I'll have to dream the rest.
I Guess I'll Have to Dream the Rest, featuring Ray Eberly and the Modernaires, another of the four sides from session number 55. The band was still in Hollywood that May 28, 1941, following the filming of Sun Valley Serenade. The band then left for San Diego, then a return to the East. Billy May had a chance to reflect on Glenn Miller, the conductor.
He was a trombone player and he was an arranger, and he was a very smart businessman. And as far as any motions leading the band, I think he was more interested in the writing and getting things the way he wanted it. And the band was really well rehearsed, and everything was marked, and you did everything exactly the same way. And it was a clean-sounding, well-rehearsed band, and that's what he wanted. There was very little conducting in the full sense.
A view of the podium from the trumpet section of Glenn Miller, Memory Maker. By June the 18th, the Glenn Miller Band had returned to Chicago. They played a show at the Chicago Theater in the afternoon, and then that night made their regular 15-minute commercial broadcast. An air check of the Glenn Miller Band in Chicago. Swing Low, Sweet Chariot found Tex Beneke, as so often happened, being featured on tenor saxophone.
Hal McIntyre was pretty much Glenn's assistant, I think, and Chummy McGregor, the piano player. They were, like we used to say sometimes, the unholy three. But Glenn did rely on me a lot for helping in the sax section and trying to iron out something that wasn't just exactly right so far as the phrasing was concerned, or where to mark the breathers. In other words, we could play 6 bars or 8 bars, and then depending on the tempo of the tune, well, it's time to breathe. But Glenn used to call on me to do a lot of solos. And he'd come over and stand right in front of me, and since I was in the front row, he always liked to look at the guys when they played, and it can shake you a little bit. In fact, Johnny Best, when John would stand up to play, and Glenn would stand back there and just watch him, with those glasses down on his nose, and John would freeze almost sometimes, and he'd come off shaking like a leaf. He used to say, the old man put the fisheye on me tonight again, and I can't play like that. But he'd come over to me and say, okay, Texas, let's hear you blow now. And I'd stand up and start playing. He'd be staring at me, and I'd stare right back at him. He'd get closer, and I'd get closer to him, and I'm still blowing. And at the end of a couple of choruses, he'd say, go ahead, Texas, take another one. They're small. And sometimes he'd have me blowing 20 or 30 choruses, and I'd be flat out by the time I got finished. Collapse almost. But the other guy said, I don't know how they couldn't understand how I could just stand up there and play and glare at Glenn and have him glare at me, But Glenn got a charge out of that because he knew I wasn't afraid of him, and some of the guys were. Not really afraid of him, but he could make them nervous.
Another view of the podium from the front line, the saxophone section of Glenn Miller, Memory Maker. From the RCA Victor Recording Studios in Chicago, the Glenn Miller Orchestra producing Adios, featuring Dale McMickle on muted trumpet, Doc Goldberg on bass. For the Glenn Miller Band, it was recording session number 56.
He had plenty of detractors. People jealous of his talent were consumed with envy. But if you checked into any of their beefs regarding him, you would usually find that they had unsuccessfully tried to get the better of him at some time or other, and in their failure they resented him. On the other hand, his friends, and they were legion, would back him to the limit, would stand by him till Judgment Day.
The podium as seen at close range from the rhythm section, pianist Chummy McGregor remembering his good friend and leader, Glenn Miller.
Darling, you and I know the reason why a summer sky is blue, and we know why birds in the trees sing melodies too, and why love will grow from the first hello until the last goodbye. So to sweet romance there is just one answer: you and I.
Another of the four sides made it session number 56, the ballad You and I. Then it would be 7 weeks before the band would return to the recording studios. It was personal appearance time for Glenn Miller, Memory Maker. The Glenn Miller Orchestra left Chicago June 16, 1941, playing one-nighters at the Lincoln Field House in Wisconsin Rapids, the Prom in St. Paul, the Roof Garden in Arnold's Park, Turnpike Casino in Lincoln, Municipal Auditorium in Kansas City, Meadow Acres in Topeka, a night off, back to Kansas City, then the Frog Hop Ballroom, St. Joseph, the Forum in Wichita, Municipal Auditorium, Oklahoma City, Crystal City Park, Tulsa, the Shrine Mosque in Springfield, then back to St. Louis for 3 more nights. Then, starting another series of one-nighters, Miller added Bobby Hackett as guitarist and cornetist.
At the time that I wanted to join his band, he didn't need any trumpet players, so the guitar came in handy. It got me the gig.
Well, it lasted pretty well.
Well, I only played it temporarily, and then I moved in with the brass.
And 1 week later, they began a 5-night stand at the Eastwood Gardens in Detroit.
Little piggy was a hip little piggy, and he boogie-woogied all of the time. This little piggy was a hip little piggy, and he boogie-woogied all of the time.
The Glenn Miller Orchestra broadcasting from the Eastwood Gardens in Detroit the night of July 17th, 1941. Paula Kelly, Tex Beneke, and the Modernaires singing Boogly Woogly Piggy. This is Chuck Cecil in the 9th hour of a 12-hour remembrance of Glenn Miller. We're listening to the original records and broadcasts, along with the original musicians, arrangers, and vocalists, sharing their memories of Glenn Miller, Memory Maker.
What makes a fella start thinking of falling in love?
It's not the season, the reason is plain as the moon.
It's just Elmer's tune. What makes a lady of 80 go out on the loose? Why does a gander meander in search of a goose?
What puts the kick in a chicken, the magic in June? It's just Elmer's tune.
Listen, listen, there's a lot you're liable to be missing.
Sing it, swing it, any old way and any old time.
The hurdy-gurdy's the birdies, the cop on the beat, the candy maker, the baker, the man on the street,
the city charmer, the farmer, the man in the moon, all sing Elmer's tune. The birdies, the cop on the beat, the baker and the man on the street,
the city charmer, the farmer, the man in the moon,
all sing Elmer's tune. They all sing Elmer's tune. They all sing Elmer's tune. Sing Elmer's tune.
The Glenn Miller Orchestra had finally arrived back home in New York City for recording session number 57. It was the 11th of August, 1941, when Elmer's tune was recorded, featuring vocalist Ray Eberly, the Modernaires, and for Paula Kelly, it would be her last record session before Marion Hutton returned to the band.
When I got to join the band in 1941, he was a businessman. It was just getting kind of salty with the war thing, you know, everything was kind of erupting or whatever with the war rumors and so forth. And I think Glenn was very much upset about that, and of course he enlisted. And of course what he wanted to beginning it had the whole band go, but of course that was impossible because Tex had gone in the Navy and all that sort of thing. But he did go in. After he went in the service, he changed completely to a real about face, and he was the dearest guy. We had a ball with him. Before, I guess he just figured that he had to be the papa of the thing and the master, so to speak. So he was quite businesslike. But then we got to know him well. I'm glad we did too, because it was the last time we really got a chance to see him.
Who were the guys in the Modern Years?
Brewster, Bill Conway, Chuck Goldstein, and Hal Dickinson.
And they stayed that way all the time with Miller.
Well, of course, every change. There's Skip Nelson and somebody else.
Oh, yeah.
Wait a minute. One time we had a change. We had Bill Green. I guess it's Bill Conway's place he took, yeah.
And it was Bill Conway who would take over the guitar work when Bobby Hackett was called to play in the trumpet section. Changes were a constant within the band of Glenn Miller, Memory Maker. Of Glenn Miller's 71 commercial recording sessions as a leader, The Man in the Moon came from session number 58, September 3rd, 1941, New York City. And clarinet work of Willie Schwartz was becoming a trademark, the identifying sound of the band.
It wasn't just me, it was all five of us. There were five reeds, 4 saxophones and a clarinet. And we all had to play together and breathe together and phrase together. So there wasn't any feeling of being a soloist or anything special. I was just one of the saxophones. And that was the whole idea, to try to make the five of us sound like one.
we'll be close together, wait and see. Oh, by the way, this time the dream's on me. You'll take my hand and you look at me adoringly. But as things stand, this time the dream's on me. It would be fun to be certain that I'm the one, to know that I at least supply the shoulder you'll lean upon, to see you through till you're everything you want to be. It can't be true, but this time the dream's on me.
This Time the Dream's on Me, the sixth and final side from session number 58 by the orchestra of Glenn Miller, Memory Maker.
Jingle bells, I don't mind the storm. Bring your coats and hats, you lukewarm cats. I've got my horn to keep me warm.
Down in Mexico, we have got no snow.
You have got no snow?
Down in Mexico, sit around all day, hear the music play. Every time we sing, tequila glasses ring.
Jingle, 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 jingle.
October 20th, 1941, New York, recording session number 59 for the Glenn Miller Orchestra, which seemed to be everywhere. They played the Keith Theater in Boston, where the management for the occasion raised the price of admission to 44, 55, and 65 cents. The Palace in Albany, Proctor's in Schenectady, the Earl in Philadelphia, where there were two other acts on stage plus a film, the Stanley in Pittsburgh, several one-nighters, a stand at the Pennsylvania again, even playing at a football halftime at Ebbets Field in Brooklyn the day before recording Jingle Bells. Bill Finnegan had made the arrangement that featured Tex Beneke, Ernie Caceres, and the Modernaires.
Usually we'd work the vocal parts out with the Modernaires. In some cases, we'd write the whole vocal arrangement out, and then they'd learn it from that, or we'd collaborate with the Modernaires and work out the voice parts before we did the whole arrangement. So we worked both ways with that. Bill Conway was sort of the brains of the Modernaires that time, and we'd work with Bill. He was one of the group.
Won't you come with me to Dreamsville, Ohio? There's no better place to dream. There's a winding lane that leads you down to a stream. When the moon comes up in Dreamsville, Ohio, and it lights the town below, then you'll know the sweetest moments you'll ever know. You'll find a kissing rod that stands beside a wishing well, but you must seal every wish with a kiss, or you'll break the spell. There's a happiness in Dreamsville, Ohio. Even money couldn't buy. All that's missing down in Dreamsville is you and money couldn't buy. All that's missing down in Dreamsville is you and
Dreamsville, Ohio, along with Jingle Bells, Papa Nicolini, and This Is No Laughing Matter, they were the four Bluebird sides from session number 59 for Glenn Miller, Memory Maker. Everything I Love with the vocalist Ray Eberle may have been the prettiest number from recording session number 60, but the most popular was a Jerry Gray composition called String of Pearls that featured Bobby Hackett playing cornet.
I remember when we first rehearsed that piece, Jerry Gray brought it in, and I played the solo, and I don't like to play the same thing twice if I can help it, and I try not to. But when we first ran it down, I played that solo, and Glenn called me over. He says, "Do you remember what you played on that?" And I said, "Well, if I had to." So he said, "It'd be good if you played it that way all the time. It fits the piece and so forth." So I thanked him and kept playing it that way most of the time.
Glenn Miller recording session number 60. It happened on the 3rd day of November 1941 when Miller's band recorded String of Pearls. String of Pearls, a Jerry Gray composition and arrangement.
That is still the biggest seller of mine, and I think of Glenn's too. We still get a lot of royalties, I do, from performances and record sellers all over the world, especially Japan and West Germany and well, all the countries, you know.
String of Pearls, most memorable of the 6 sides, made that November day 1941, concluding the 9th hour of a 12-hour story made by Glenn Miller, Memory Maker.